In a world where equality does not yet and may never exist, what can we do? You're listening to It's Final, and you're about to find out. There are so many different inequalities that do exist, but here I have chosen to focus on the one surrounding gender. Still today, not all people believe that women are equal to men and should be treated as such. In my own survey, 9% of participants said that they believe children should be taught differently in high school based upon gender. This patriarchal thinking does not come from nowhere. People learn it throughout their lives, starting from childhood. Kids will learn everywhere they go. As they grow up, they absorb all that surrounds them and adopt mannerisms and thought processes. There are two places that I would argue that most children spend the most of their time. These places are the school and at home. Because children are learning and picking up on ideas everywhere they are, I would suggest that they learn the most where the most of their time is spent. What are they learning in these places? What are they learning in school and at home? Are they learning to treat others with respect? Are they learning equality? Educators cannot control what students experience at home, and many families, because of tradition, religion, and the patriarchy, are enforcing gender roles and sexism. To cite Christa Spears and Ellen Stone in Gender Stereotypes and Discrimination, How Sex Impacts Development, equity and justice are routinely denied to children because of the pervasive ways in which sexism affects children from birth onward across all the domains of their lives. Effectively, the purpose of school is to educate children, and while school should not force ideas onto students, promoting equality from an early age might encourage feminism and give children the strength and knowledge to fight back against injustices and societal pressures surrounding gender that children experience during adolescence and throughout their lives. Sexism and gender norms are introduced starting at birth. From girls in little pink bows to boys with tiny truck shirts, society is constantly presenting gender norms. Citing Spears and Stone, gender prejudices can be explicit, such as when a boy is told, "Stop crying, boys don't cry," or they can be implicit, such as when a father automatically grimaces when his son picks up a doll. At the age of 5, my mother signed me up for ballet class. I went to one session and told her I would not be returning. To me, even at this young age, dance was an activity for girls, girly girls who liked pink, and I did not want to be that. I was decidedly a tomboy. I liked purple, Pink's stronger, tougher sister, and I liked mud and messy and brave. In my little mind, these things couldn't be a girl. Being a girl was weakness, and I tried my best to avoid being associated with it. Many think that children of 5 or 6 are far too young to discuss gender inequalities, but I know that I was thinking about them then, even if I didn't know what I was grappling with. I sure wish now that my elementary school teachers had taught me about it then. Only in high school did I begin to self-identify as a feminist, and only since college have I become much more open about it. Only 78 participants self-identified as feminists, even though 94% of participants agreed that it meant equality across genders. I asked Mary DiNapoli, a local secondary school teacher, several questions, one of which was whether or not she self-identified as a feminist, and she had this to say.
I do. I think that for a long time I really did not, and I was one of those people that was always friends with boys and did a lot of not self-hating, not really too strong a word, but would think of women as, or girls as doing silly things, or trying to just reassert that the masculine thing was right, to be logical or to be less emotional. But I think that a lot of traditional patriarchal ways of doing things so clearly don't work, and to have been successful, to bring it to teaching, which I don't know if that's helpful, if you look at the effect of being able to be emotional with students, or to be loving, or to do the things that are quote unquote feminine, can be so nurturing and so productive and so helpful to growth, that for me as a teacher, that's one of the really huge pieces of it. But it's hard for me to articulate because for a long time I thought it was like a silly thing, like feminism was a silly thing, probably until like my mid-20s, and that it was people being like overreacting and wanting special attention, where I realize now I was just sort of self-hating to try to align myself with the other side. Still working on that.
To prevent other girls from hating pink because society says they should love it, and to tell boys that they can be a nurse, I propose the early integration of gender equality into a kindergarten curriculum. It is much easier to teach something than to unteach it. 89% of survey participants said that they have been treated differently because of their gender. And talking about feminism in schools, in kindergarten classes, would encourage children to at least think about equality and why certain groups are treated differently. Most kindergartners are open to new ideas, and they would easily pick up on gender equality because there is less of a focus on gender differences at this age. In the survey that I released, only 44% of participants stated that in kindergarten they noticed the gender of those they spent time with. In high school, however, 89% of participants noticed the gender of those they spent time with. As children get older, they realize more and more the differences between genders and the differences in how they are treated. Their beliefs harden. Many girls grow up with an internalized misogyny, and many boys will display sexism because they were taught a superiority. As mentioned in the article Good Girls by Armstrong, Hamilton, and Seeley, college campuses in America are riddled with sexism, one example being that of slut-shaming. Young, intelligent women stoop to levels of self-degradation and the degradation of others, and in participating in slut-shaming, reinforce male dominance and female subordination. The article also suggests that high-class women employ slut discourse to assert class advantage, defining their styles of femininity and approaches to sexuality as classy rather than trashy. Low-status women express class resentment, deriding rich sluts for their wealth, exclusivity, and participation in casual sexual activity. Whether they are aware or not, their negative discourse, while it also serves to put down women of different socioeconomic statuses, perpetuates sexism and reinforces the idea that it is okay to refer to women that way. Good Girls also suggests that the slut stigma is more about regulating public gender performance than regulating private sexual practices. This can also be applied to the circulation of the homophobic F-word among adolescent boys, as it serves to ensure conformity with hegemonic masculinity. In schools, sexism can lead to sexual harassment. Gudjonsdottir and Beejersdottir, from Gendered Bullying and the Making of Femininity in the Icelandic School Culture, suggest that girls are more likely to experience sexual harassment than boys, and that girls are most commonly sexually harassed in the form of sexual and degrading words or jokes. This is happening in grade school. This is the start of slut-shaming. Where did this discourse come from? When, at what age do these women start slut-shaming, and what does it mean when they do? How do we stop it in kindergarten so that it does not manifest in these ways later on? I asked DeNapoli if gender roles ever come up in her class. This was her response.
Oh my gosh, so much. All of the time. I think it's tough because you don't want to set norms, right? You don't want to like reinforce like toxic behavior, but you also are dealing with, especially in 8th grade, like these 13 or 14-year-old bodies that are biologically extremely hormonal and that play into certain like representations, right? Like there are days where you have girls that, and I know this because I've had some students in like 8th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade, and they become comfortable with you, where they're just like having their period and they're having a meltdown, right? And they're crying and they're upset, and you're like, okay, like I understand that this is, you know, coming off one way to students is like girls are crying and girls are sad and girls are crazy, but like I know you're going through it, like a actual teenage thing right now.
DeNapoli, along with most of the rest of us, still struggles to know what to think and what to say in some of these difficult situations. In her class, though, she told me how she deals with gender inequality and how aware of it some of her students are.
I find one of the things that I have to do so often with 8th grade boys is don't put your feet on that chair in front of you, like trying to get them just to be aware of like how much space that they take up, or like don't do that, don't put your feet there. And then I get in my head about like, oh my gosh, man spreading, boys. And then like at the end of the day, a girl will come in and she'll do the same thing, and I'll be like, oh man, I oversaw it, like I was looking for it too much today.
It might be difficult to tell 8th graders that how they are living and how they see the world is warped and unjust, but as previously mentioned, younger age groups are more open to new ideas and concepts. Thus, one part of the solution to gender inequality would be to integrate gender equality into the curriculum of kindergarten classes. This would involve a conscious and constant effort to recognize and change inequalities. Children must have access to toys and books and materials that go against gender stereotypes. In dolls, there must be equal number of girls and boys. In books, there needs to be equal number female and male protagonists, and these protagonists should not conform to gender stereotypes. Kindergartners should be seeing women firefighters and male nurses. In the same turn, it is important to allow all children to be what they want to be.
So a lot of what I try to deal with gender roles, I think, is trying to learn from them too, and trying to make sure that, especially for girls, that they don't feel like there's something for their future that's right or wrong, as long as it's their choice and they're choosing it. Like if you want to be a wife and a mother and have kids and not work, like if that's your choice, I don't think it's fair for culture to tell you that that makes you anything less.
In school especially, children get ideas about what they will be when they grow up. Gender stereotypes may discourage girls or boys from a certain field. For example, to cite Florence Christopoulos and Joanne Borden in Sexism in Elementary School Mathematics, a scanning of verbal problems in textbooks on elementary school mathematics indicates that the content is often oriented toward stereotypical male interests. Are boys better at math, or has math class been catered to boys? The need for teachers and textbooks that are not sex-biased is clear. We cannot know to what extent these biases impact our children, and so it is that much more important to incorporate gender equality in all aspects. Just because the textbook becomes gender neutral does not mean that the teaching does. To cite Sexism in Schools by Campbell Leeper and Christia Spears Brown, some teachers are more likely to perceive boys than girls as logical, competitive, liking math, independent in math, and needing math, and are more likely to attribute boys' success in math to ability, but attribute girls' success to effort. These implicit and explicit biases can affect teachers' expectations for their students, and research has consistently shown that expectations about students' abilities can be self-fulfilling. That is why teachers must also become educated and learn how to be feminists before they step into the classroom. I also suggest the addition of another role model for young students. Every Friday, an hour should be reserved for a speaker to come to the class. The speaker should contradict gender norms and talk to students about his or her job. This will serve not only to remind the children that they can be whatever they want to be, but also to inspire each of them. When children do observe gender inequalities, the teacher must encourage them to speak out and discuss these issues. If a book with a gender-conforming character is read, these stereotypes should be pointed out. In these subtle ways, children can learn at a very young age to treat each other as equals, regardless of gender. This has been It's Final.